Welcome to the window on talkSPORT, brought to you by Intuit Quickbooks. Save time and unlock growth with integrated business tools and AI automation, all in one place. Joining me this morning is talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, Alex Crook. Crookie, let's get underway then. Cole Palmer. I mean, there's a lot of links to Manchester United over the last couple of days. Is that completely off, and is that something that's just going to be explored again in the future?
Well, the word coming out of Chelsea when it comes to Cole Palmer is untouchable, which is no real surprise when you think on his day when he's fully fit and firing, which he hasn't really been over the course of this season so far. He is probably their best player, certainly their best creator, someone who I think still has a good chance of being on the plane with England for the World Cup next summer, but he is going to need to find a bit of form. Obviously, there have been those reports circulating that he's a little bit unsettled in London, missing his Mancunian home. But yeah, as I've said to you, I think previously, I don't see this as a deal that will happen anytime soon in terms of Manchester United or even a return to Manchester City. It would take an astronomical fee, and Chelsea, very reluctant sellers.
Was there any reported fees bounced about, or is this all just, hearsay?
I don't think Chelsea would even put a number on it at this stage, to be honest. They would just rebuff any inquiry. Obviously, their model is very much on signing young, talented players and then selling for a profit. But I think Cole Palmer is the exception to that rule, because they know that if they are to mount any kind of serious title challenge or try and win the Champions League at any point in the near future, Cole Palmer is going to be absolutely central to that.
And we have to remember as well, of course, the long contracts that he got put in. I believe it's 2033. And I mean, if you're trying to get anyone out of that, and I think he's on low wages, isn't he, at the same time, just due to what Chelsea and Blueco's methods actually are. But I think it's an interesting one to explore, because obviously it's not happening right now, and we discussed the future of a player like Bruno Fernandes, and we know that Cole Palmer can work off of the wing and can also work as a number 10 at the same time as well. If I'm a Manchester United fan and I'm thinking that Bruno Fernandes is 31 years of age, Cole Palmer, who's a boyhood, even though he came out through Manchester City's academy, he's a Manchester United supporter. And if I'm a Man United fan, and I'm thinking, if I can get a couple more years out of Bruno Fernandes, I'd be licking my lips in a way.
What, the prospect of getting both of them in the same team? I mean, that would be...
No. In the sense of when Bruno Fernandes does eventually leave Manchester United, if they can get a couple of more years out of him, then if the replacement is Cole Palmer and Manchester United are, on the cusp of something great yet again, almost like the Arteta situation when he came in and Arsenal would just completely... You look at the start of the lineup and it was like Kolasinac, for goodness sake, and I can't bother to name any more because we'll be here all day. But if Manchester United in that time, in the next 2 to 3 years, and Cole Palmer's linked, I mean, you as a Manchester United fan would be absolutely buzzing, no?
Absolutely. You might be getting a bit carried away, though, about United being on the cusp of greatness after 2 wins under Michael Carrick, albeit 2 great wins. But do you know what? If you ask me now, on form, and, Cole Palmer, I know he had that upturn at the Club World Cup, but his form actually in 2025, mainly due to injury, wasn't great. I don't think it's a given that he does get in Thomas Tuchel's squad for the World Cup in the summer. If you said to me now, who would you rather have in that number 10 position next season, Bruno Fernandes or Cole Palmer? I'm going to come down on Bruno Fernandes. I just think his numbers in terms of goals and assists, what he brings to the team, the range of passing, I'm not sure Cole Palmer is quite there yet.
But in a couple of years, when Bruno Fernandes does eventually leave, I think it would be unbelievable. As you already know, Patrick Dorgu sustained an injury off the back of Manchester United's incredible 3-2 win over Arsenal at the weekend. If you could just tell us a little bit more about the injury, and obviously with it being the transfer window, a couple of days to go, closing at 7 p.m. on the 2nd of February, are Manchester United looking for any more reinforcements?
Well, they're still assessing the injury to Dorgu. It is a hamstring issue. There was hope, I think, after the game against Arsenal that it was no more than cramp, but obviously that's not the case. There have been reports that he could miss up to 10 weeks, which basically rules him out for most of the rest of the season, which is a real blow on a personal level because he had a lot of stick this season, Patrick Dorgu, but finally he seems to have found his place in the team and now he's going to be unavailable for a few weeks. I did speak to my sources at United and asked that might change their approach in the final days of the window. The answer I got back was I'd be surprised. So at the moment that they're still not planning on making any signings. Could that change between now and 7 o'clock on Monday? Never say never. I think Michael Carrick will be pushing from within just in terms of numbers because they're in a great position now. 1 game a week is basically a 15-game shootout for a place in the top 5, which should be enough for Champions League football next season, which would be a tremendous achievement when you look at where they were last year.
It's mental at the same time as well, because I can remember me and you having a conversation, and I think you said something along the lines of Patrick Dorgu doesn't seem like he's fit enough to wear the Manchester United shirt. I think, and that's not me making up blatant lies because you've just laughed then. Are you sort of going back on your words a little bit, Crookie? Because obviously I think since the back end of December, I'm going to pinpoint it to the 21st of December, that Patrick Dorgu, since he went into that left wing position, it's been quality. He has.
I think that's the key, isn't it? You know, he isn't a left wing back. He's definitely not a left back, but he does bring something to the team going forward. So in that wide left position, I think he's been excellent. I think Michael Carrick has managed to boost his confidence where it was being shot down publicly by Ruben Amorim. He was suggesting that he was struggling under the weight of the expectation of that famous United jersey. So yeah, fair play to Dorgu for proving his critics wrong, and that's why this injury has just come at the worst possible time.
We spoke about Raheem Sterling yesterday and his future at Chelsea. We know that he's been cast out. Reports today, is it likely that the club and the player could come to an agreement over a contract termination?
Well, at the moment, that seems the most likely way out of Stamford Bridge for Raheem Sterling. He's the last member of that so-called bomb squad, still training on his own away from the first-team picture because Axel Disasi has, to some extent, been welcomed back into the fold. He's still got 18 months left on his contract, Sterling. It's a £300,000 a week plus deal, so it's going to be an expensive termination as far as Chelsea are concerned. I think they're hoping that somebody comes to the table and offers them a way out before the window closes. That looked like it might be West Ham at one point, but Raheem Sterling not keen on a loan move to the London Stadium. Fulham have had historic interest, but they look like they're going to sign Oscar Bob. I do wonder if someone like Crystal Palace might come to the table. Obviously, have had injury issues in that wide area. I know Ismail Assar is back fit now, but their squad looks light, and they've obviously got European football in the second half of the season. That would be a move that would suit Raheem Sterling because he had interest from Bayern Munich at the end of the summer transfer window, but it came very late for him to really make that move, and I think he's always been keen to stay in London where his family are quite settled.
Yeah, but talk to me obviously about the salary that he's currently on. We're talking in the 300,000s, aren't we? And with all due respect to Raheem, he is a bit washed. He is washed at the moment. I know he's not obviously getting the game time. Chelsea move hasn't worked for any party, if it's him, his team, or Chelsea as a whole. Is this a case of Sterling needing to sort of like come back down to reality and realising that he's not going to get those wage demands that he's, used to at Chelsea and when he was used to at Manchester City at the same time as well? Because clubs like Crystal Palace, are they really going to pay? They're not going to be able to pay £300,000. Are they really going to give him £150,000? Because I think we had a conversation yesterday that Jean-Philippe Mateta, he wants to go to Nottingham Forest or an Aston Villa where he could potentially get £150,000, and he won't get that at Crystal Palace. And will Crystal Palace take a punt on someone that's been so out of form for the last couple of years now and give him that sort of wage?
Well, it would have to be a punt, wouldn't it? Because he's just turned 31. He'd be not in the veteran stage of his career by any stretch of the imagination, but he hasn't played at all for 8 months since what was quite an unproductive loan spell at Arsenal. Hasn't kicked a ball for Chelsea in a season and a half. So it would be a gamble for somebody. Speaking of people close to Sterling, I don't think money is the main motivating factor now. I think he wants to go out and play, but as I say, he doesn't particularly want to relocate the family from London again. So that does somewhat limit the options as to where he could pitch up.
Limits the options massively, Crook. I know that Fulham have got the money and, would be able to pay the fees because we're one of the richest clubs in the league, but we're so stingy. So you don't want to relocate, but that really puts your hands behind your back, in my opinion. You're not going to go back to QPR. They're going to drop down to the Championship. And we've had this conversation at the same time as well. You don't want to relocate, but that might have to be the option. If a club comes in from the MLS, I think that will probably be the best move for someone like Raheem Sterling. We spoke about Jesse Lingard and him going to South Korea. I think just go and reinvent yourself because, you're running out of options really being in London with the only teams that could probably afford your wages are Tottenham, Chelsea and Arsenal, realistically, and none of them are going to buy you.
Well, you say Tottenham. Again, they look a little bit light in the wide areas, and Thomas Frank might just see Raheem Sterling as someone whose career he can revive and can come in and provide that experience they've been looking for with the likes of Andy Robertson, which is another move that may or may not happen between now and Monday. So again, I wouldn't totally rule out an approach from Spurs. I'd be surprised, based on what I've been told in the last 18 months, if Sterling was willing to go to the MLS or Saudi Arabia. I think he's had those opportunities and hasn't been particularly attracted to them.
Doing a William Gallas, then he's going to be he played for Spurs, Chelsea, and Arsenal. Only a few people can say that they've done that. Crookie, you mentioned Axel Disasi. Obviously, back training with the squad, was part of that bomb squad as well. What are the rumours circulating around his future as well? Could he be moving to East London?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that West Ham have terminated the loan of Igor because they're trying to get a couple of loan players in this month. Igor has been sent back to Brighton. That was a move that didn't really work out. And actually, he was the player who scuppered Mark Gay switched to Liverpool because he rejected Crystal Palace and went to West Ham, and therefore Crystal Palace didn't have a replacement for Gay, and he ended up staying for the first half of the season. You can only have 2 domestic loans at any one time. We know, and we reported this yesterday on talkSPORT, that they're trying to sign Antonin Kinski, the goalkeeper from Tottenham, on loan. And you can only think the reason they've sent Igor back is because they're also looking for a second domestic loan. And Axel Disasi certainly would fit the bill. Crystal Palace and West Ham, the 2 teams that have been mentioned to me as potential destinations for him between now and Monday.
Something I saw when I woke up this morning, the future of Lewis Dunk reports that he could be heading to Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest, I mean, obviously not looking very healthy in the Premier League table at the moment. Over 458, over 500 appearances for Brighton, Lewis Dunk. You know, he's in the territory of a one-club man, but obviously went on loan to Bognor Regis. Don't get much better than that. That's obviously where we went on holiday as kids, didn't we, Crookie? And Bristol City as well. 34 years of age. Is this a case of Nottingham Forest trying to bolster their squad ahead of a potential, tough run in the remaining games of the Premier League season? Or what's the feeling like? Because obviously you've got connections down on the South Coast and especially Brighton as well. He was born there, came up through the academy. Does he really want, to see out his career at someone like Nottingham Forest? Because he is 34.
I'd still recommend Butlins at Bognor Regis, by the way.
Oh, Butlins Bognor.
Family day out. I was slightly surprised when I saw this link, and I've spoken to people at Brighton. They tell me that Forest's inquiry was immediately slapped down. Never say never, I guess, but you're right. Lewis Dunk is as close to a one-club man as you get. If you cut him, he bleeds blue and white. I would be surprised if he was willing to relocate and join another club at this stage of his career, particularly one who are under threat of relegation, whereas Brighton obviously now seen as a very stable Premier League entity. I could understand the attraction from a Forest perspective because even though Sean Dyche usually prides himself on setting his teams up to be hard to beat and not to concede goals, they haven't kept many clean sheets over the course of the season. He's a brilliant character as well, Brighton's captain. But I don't see this happening. I think Lewis Dunk will still very much be a Brighton player come February the 3rd. The
future of James Ward-Prowse as well. Before we get into this, do you know why his relationship with Nuno Espirito Santo is so weird?
He went to West Ham and then he was signed on loan and didn't really get a look in under Nuno. And then basically Nuno's first day at the club, they had a game, didn't they, away at Everton. Ward-Prowse was told he wouldn't be travelling and hasn't really had a look in since. He was back on the bench last weekend, but I think that was more out of necessity in terms of a lack of numbers. But I'm surprised because, yes, he may not be in the first flush of youth. Yes, he may not be the quickest player the Premier League has ever seen, but he's never particularly built his game on pace. But what he has got is a wand of a right foot, a brilliant delivery from set pieces, which is so important now in the modern game. And he's just a good lad and a good professional. So I'm surprised that he's been jettisoned. He's off to Burnley now on loan. And I think Scott Parker is the type of manager that he'll enjoy playing for. Will he keep the Clarets in the Premier League? Probably not, because I think that ship has already sailed. But if they can keep him permanently in the Championship next season, I think that could be a really good signing. Good
manager to get, arm around your shoulder at the same time as well. And it's James Ward-Prowse, if you think about like sort of 10 years ago or whatever, he was one of these, kind of ones to watch players. I always think about Football Manager and games like that, Crookie, always an absolute baller coming in from Southampton. And Man United wanted him for years, if you remember as well. Like, he was one of those people about, 8, 9, 10 years ago where it was like James Ward-Prowse is going to be going to Manchester United, and it never came to fruition as well. I think Nuno's just frustrated with him being an ex-goalkeeper. He must have put him in training, practicing free kicks, and Nuno didn't save one. But listen, James Ward-Prowse, he is quality. He is. He's got some real quality, and let's hope that he can, revive his career and, try and get some points on the board for Burnley as well, who, it already looks like the dust settled of them in the Premier League this season. This name really, stood out to me. You sent me a little voice note this morning of things that you wanted to cover, and I've forgotten about this man since he was playing for England under the reign of Lee Carsley, and I thought he was an absolute bowler. He may be only about 4'11", but the bloke was an absolute machine in midfield for England. That's Angel Gomez, still currently playing in Europe. Potential move to Wolves, Crookie.
Yeah, this would be a really good coup, I think, for Wolves. Bearing in mind they are rock bottom of the Premier League, the best they can really hope for now is to make sure they don't become officially the worst team the Premier League has ever seen. Maybe they could even overhaul Burnley and end up not finishing bottom. But you're right, Angel Gomez, given his chance by Lee Carsley, didn't disgrace himself by any means in those 4 England caps that he's got. And he went to Marseille to play under Roberto De Zerbi when his Lille contract expired last summer. There was interest from the Premier League. I know Tottenham were very keen, but he rejected them to go to Marseille. And it hasn't really worked out for him. He's only played 14 league games, hence the fact they're willing to send him out on loan. I think this would be very much a short-term deal. I don't see any scenario where Angel Gomez drops down into the Championship with Wolves next season. But I guess he thinks if he comes, gets some minutes in the Premier League, maybe he can force his way into Thomas Tuchel's plans. I would say that's unlikely. But what he can do, if he does well between now and the end of the season, assuming this move happens, is he can put himself in the shop window for another Premier League club next summer.
I found it interesting that, after his display, like I mentioned with England, that no other Premier League club sort of really went in for him and got that signature after he left at Lille as well. I know, obviously, like I mentioned, that he's quite small, but it doesn't really matter. Like N'Golo Kante was a small player, but he was an absolute baller in that midfield. One of our colleagues, and obviously your producer on Inside Devils on talkSPORT, Jamie Keane, is obviously a proud Wigan Athletic fan, and he's asked, is Ryan Lowe on his way out of Wigan? And obviously, of someone that was on talkSPORT Breakfast this morning, Steve Bruce was alongside Ali McCoist, and I think a lot of rumblings on Twitter, Crookie, is saying that Steve Bruce could be in for a return to Wigan. Is there any truth in that or not?
Well, he's a former Wigan manager, isn't he, Steve Bruce?
Yeah.
And I did a programme with him alongside Jim White a few weeks ago now, and certainly he didn't shoot down the fact that I think he fancied another tilt of management. He went to Blackpool, didn't he? And I think was disappointed that ended so prematurely. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a whisper that I've heard. I've got to say there is a lot of pressure on Ryan Lowe, and there are all kinds of whispers that maybe his tenure is coming to an end. They lost to Wycombe last night and not having the type of season they would have wanted. But yeah, Steve Bruce back at Wigan would be a really interesting fit.
Andre Onana's future at Manchester United, is that coming to an end? Obviously on loan at Trabzonspor in the Super League in Turkey at the moment. From what we've read this morning, is it true that he could be going back to Inter Milan?
I think it's a possibility. Inter are definitely casting their net for a new goalkeeper because I think Jan Sommer is out of contract at the end of the season. Emi Martinez has been mentioned quite strongly in the Italian media. I did a piece in the Notebook on Tuesday on the talkSPORT website saying that Guillermo Vicario at Tottenham is a big target as well. I think he'd be open to that move, hence the fact Tottenham are looking at Robin Roofs at Sunderland, somebody who's done really well in his first season in the Premier League. I don't think United want Onana back, that's for sure. It didn't end particularly well for him. He's on big money. They're not going to get back the transfer fee, the inflated fee that they paid for him. But Sonny Loman's very much seen as the number one now for United. I think he's had a really decent adaptation period, made a couple of big saves in that victory against Arsenal at the weekend as well. They will look to bring in an experienced number two, I think, United, to try and put pressure on Le Mans next season. But yeah, I don't see a way back for Onana. I don't see a way back for any of those players out on loan, despite the fact the manager has changed. Jadon Sancho's contract won't be renewed when it comes to an end in the summer. And there doesn't seem to be a way back for Marcus Rashford, even though the main issue was between him and Ruben Amorim. It was very much a club decision to send him out on loan. I think they're still hoping that Barcelona will pay the option and get his wages off the books as well.
Yeah, Barcelona somehow, like we spoke about last week, magically Magicling, magically or magicling? Magicling's not a word, is it? That's not a word, is it, Crookie?
Not in my vocabulary.
Magically getting some investment from somewhere. It's such a bizarre situation. Something that you sent in this morning, Crookie. Luis Henrique from Inter Milan. Bournemouth are looking at the Brazilian winger.
Yeah, this would be a really interesting transfer, I think. Obviously, Bournemouth have lost a lot of players, both in the summer window and again with Antoine Semenyo heading out the door to Manchester City a couple of weeks ago. But they have reinvested as well. Incredible signing of Ryan, incredible because he's only 19 years of age. He's a Brazilian, but they rate him so highly. There's a €100 million release clause in his contract at Bournemouth, which if that gets activated, would comfortably be a record. Sal, Henrique, 24-year-old winger at Inter Milan. I saw him play when I was watching Inter Arsenal for talkSPORT in the Champions League last week. He is also a Brazilian. And yeah, Bournemouth are trying to get a deal done. It will be a loan deal initially with the option of around about 18 to 20 million pounds to sign him permanently in the summer. And I think this would be a real statement from Bournemouth if they could sign someone from Inter Milan.
Is it a statement though? Is it just Inter Milan as of them? Obviously, I know that they're top of the Serie A, but if you're looking at the statistics as well, signed for Inter in June of 2025, 5-year contract, 17 games in Serie A, 0 goals. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, I know. Obviously, I feel like we get sort of like clouded a little bit by Brazilians and sort of like the names of Inter Milan.
Yeah, I take your point. Those numbers don't really stack up, do they? But he did well at Marseille. He certainly had much better figures there. I'm just trying to wrap my brains as to whether he was used as an out-and-out winger by Inter in that game against Arsenal. He wasn't actually. He was used as a right wing-back. So, maybe you give him a little bit of slack there if he's having to do a bit more defending.
I take it back.
But Bournemouth don't tend to play with a back three, so I think they probably are signing him as a winger, and obviously it's another option in that wide area that's been vacated by Antoine Semenyo.
Just before we finish up then, Crookie, Kurt Zouma, I've read on Twitter this morning, potentially a return to the Premier League. Am I right in thinking that he's without a club? He was playing in Romania for a period, wasn't he?
Yeah, his career has been on the slide, really, ever since that incident where he was punished for kicking his cat. Obviously did come back and captain West Ham after that, but you look at the clubs he's been to since then. As you say, he's been playing for CFR Cluj in Romania. I think I'm right in saying that he was playing in Saudi Arabia before that, in the Saudi First Division. So yeah, I think this is more of a case of him being offered around to Premier League clubs because we're getting late in the window and a few teams might just need numbers at the back. I've not heard that anything has advanced with any particular club at the moment. But he's only 31, Kurt Zouma. So, again, he's certainly not past his sell-by date.
And to finish off, Kinski from the goalkeeper from Spurs. Are we looking at a potential move to East London and West Ham?
Well, there could be a bit of a goalkeeper merry-go-round going on here because my understanding is that West Ham, as part of the conversations with Tottenham regarding Kinski, and they certainly want to take him on loan, is that Mads Hermansen, one of their backup goalkeepers, goes the other way. Now, that seems a bit strange, but obviously if Tottenham are going to let Kinski go, they do need a replacement. Another name on Spurs' list is Sam Johnston at Wolves, but he might end up being in the team at Molineux because Jose Sarr is wanted by Nottingham Forest, which is a bit of a weird one because I think Matt Sells is now their number one. Obviously, John Victor picked up that injury after making a mistake a few weeks ago. So Jose Sarr would be swapping number one duty at Wolves to go and sit on the Forest bench in a World Cup year. Now, he's probably nailed on to start for Portugal, whatever happens, but that does seem a little bit of a sideways step.
Crookie, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it massively, ladies and gentlemen. Please remember, if you're new here, to like and subscribe just down below. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. And, of course, check out Alex Crook on Twitter with all of the latest transfer news. See you later. You've been watching The Window on talkSPORT, brought to you by Intuit Quickbooks. Save time and unlock growth with integrated business tools and AI automation, all in one place.